At the end of the day, tidy your desk. The departure documentation will be handled by Human Resources, Holly. As I read the sentences again, they became blurry on my computer screen. All I received from Summit Edge Logistics after 5 years of devoted service was a chilly, indifferent email. It had only taken me 3 days to bury my father. An authorized bereavement leave of 3 days. The email went on to say, "We need people who prioritize their work, as though going to my father's burial was a social event I could choose to attend rather than submitting quarterly reports." The leather of my chair creaked in the quiet of the early morning as I reclined. With dawn just starting to illuminate the sky outside, the Boise office was still largely deserted. After my brief leave, I was anxious to go back to work, so I arrived early. My name is Holly Peterson, and I was the regional team lead of Summit Edge Logistics' top-performing division until just 2 minutes ago. By the time I was 34, I had established a team that was like family in addition to a career. We encouraged one another to succeed professionally, supported one another during challenging times, and shared birthday celebrations. I glanced around my workplace, including the handwritten thank you messages from team members I had mentored, the framed photo of us together at the corporate retreat, and the little cactus my colleagues had given me for Christmas. A few personal belongings that might fit in a cardboard box encapsulated 5 years of my existence. My direct boss, Dan Weaver, who had personally authorized my bereavement leave only a week prior, signed the termination notice that was attached to the email. Failure to maintain adequate presence during critical operational periods, it stated. Apparently, one of these ill-defined important times coincided with my father's passing. I refrained from crying. I didn't barge into Dan's office and demand an explanation or throw my fist against the desk. Rather, I snapped a picture of the email using my phone and sent it to my own account. I then turned off my computer, got up, and started packing my belongings in a methodical manner. My desk was just partially cleared when other staff members began to arrive. The first person to notice was Tanya from accounting. When she saw my package, her eyes widened and she said, "Holly, what's happening?" "I've been let go," was my straightforward response. "What? Why?" Apparently, taking approved bereavement leave to bury my father wasn't showing proper priority for my work. Tanya's expression changed from bewilderment to indignation. "That is incorrect. Did you speak with Paula? This should be communicated to the regional manager." "No," I answered, carefully putting newspaper around my plant. "I will not resist it. However, I also won't forget it." When you work closely with people for years, you learn to read their expressions. As I continued packing, more of my team members arrived. Jason was the first of my direct reports to hear the news, his usual cheerful grin vanishing instantly. "This is bull," he started, but I cut him off with a small shake of my head. "It's done, Jason. Dan made his decision. But we just finished the Newbrook merger last month. Profits are up 18% this quarter because of your planning." I smiled sadly. Apparently, that wasn't enough. By 9:30, all 7 of my core team members had gathered around my desk in silent solidarity. Ethan, our logistics specialist who rarely showed emotion, looked like he might punch a wall. Veronica, our client relations manager, was openly crying. Behind them stood Michael, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla, each with expressions ranging from disbelief to fury. "You can't leave," Veronica insisted. "The Wilson account renewal is next week. The Hernandez shipping contract is in negotiations. None of us knows the system like you do." I finished taping up my box. Dan should have thought of that before he fired me for attending my father's funeral. The severity of what I just said hung in the air. My father, gone just a week ago, the funeral soil still fresh. And now, this betrayal from a company I had poured my soul into. "I need everyone back at their desks," came a sharp voice from behind us. Dan Weaver stood there, arms crossed, his thin face set in a disapproving frown. "We have deadlines to meet." No one moved. "Now," he added, his voice rising slightly. After a long moment, my team dispersed, each giving me a meaningful look as they returned to their workstations. Dan approached me, lowering his voice. This could have been handled with more discretion if you'd waited until the end of the day to pack up. I met his gaze steadily. Like the discretion you showed in firing me via email after approving my bereavement leave, his jaw tightened. Business needs change rapidly. Summit Edge needs people who understand that priorities shift. Your father's passing was unfortunate, but I warned, my voice deadly quiet. Don't finish that sentence, Dan. For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across his face. Then he straightened, adjusting his tie. Human Resources is expecting you. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I picked up my box. Don't worry. I won't make a scene. But remember this moment, Dan. You might find it important later. The Human Resources office was clinical, white walls, minimal decoration, and Barbara Kent's sympathetic but practiced expression. She was new to the company, having joined just 6 months ago, and I could see she was uncomfortable with the situation. I'm sorry about this, Holly, she said, sliding separation papers across her desk. And I'm very sorry about your father. Thank you, I replied, scanning the documents. Standard severance, 2 weeks' pay, a non-disparagement clause, a reminder of my non-compete agreement, which prohibited me from working for direct competitors for 6 months. Is there anything I should know about why this happened? Barbara asked cautiously. This seems abrupt. I debated how much to share, then decided on the truth. I pulled out my phone and showed her the email. 3 days of approved bereavement leave, and I'm fired for not prioritizing work. Barbara's professional demeanor slipped, her eyes widening. This is the actual termination notice? Just an email? No performance improvement plan? No documented warnings? No nothing. She frowned, making a note on her legal pad. I need to verify some things with the legal department. Would you excuse me for a moment? While Barbara stepped out, I gazed through the window. From this floor, I could see the Boise River winding through the city. My father had loved fishing that river. He taught me patience there, standing in waders as the current rushed past our knees. The river moves, Holly girl, he'd say. But the rocks stay steady. Be like the rocks. Barbara returned 20 minutes later, her expression carefully neutral, but her tight smile told me everything. Nothing would change. Unfortunately, Idaho is an at-will employment state, she began. The company is within its rights to. I understand, I interrupted, signing the documents without further argument. Summit Edge can do whatever it wants. Just like I can. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Off the record, this isn't right. If you wanted to pursue action. I don't, I said firmly. But thank you. As I walked through the main office toward the exit, I felt eyes following me. My team watched silently, their faces somber. I gave them a small smile, my last act as their leader. Outside, the September air was surprisingly warm. I placed my box in the trunk of my car and sat in the driver's seat, allowing myself a moment to process everything. My phone chimed with a text message, then another, and another. Jason, this is wrong. What can we do? Veronica, are you okay? Can we meet up later? Ethan, Dan's a spineless jerk. The team is furious. More messages poured in, expressions of outrage, support, loyalty. These people weren't just colleagues. They were my professional family. I started my car, a plan already forming in my mind. I wouldn't fight Summit Edge directly. I wouldn't sue, though I probably had grounds. No, I would be strategic. Patient, like my father taught. Me, the rocks stay steady while the river rushes past. My phone rang. It was Hank Fleming, the CEO of Vertex Transport Systems, Summit Edge's biggest competitor. We'd met at an industry conference last year and kept in touch. He'd been trying to recruit me for months. It was time to return his call. The Vertex Transport Systems office was everything Summit Edge wasn't: open concept, collaborative workspaces, and large windows framing the Boise skyline. Hank Fleming, a burly man with a silver beard and keen eyes, welcomed me with a firm handshake. "I've been hoping you'd call," he said, guiding me to a conference room. Though I admit I didn't expect it would be under these circumstances. Word traveled fast in our industry. Hank already knew about my termination, though not the details. I filled him in as we sat down, showing him Dan's email. "That's not just bad management," Hank said, frowning. "That's inhumane. Bereavement leave exists for a reason. Summit Edge has always valued profits over people." I replied, "I just never thought I'd be on the receiving end." Hank leaned forward. "I'll be blunt, Holly. I want you on my team. Vertex is expanding our Pacific Northwest operations, and we need someone with your expertise. The division director position is yours if you want it." My heart skipped. Division director, a significant step up from my role at Summit Edge. More responsibility, more authority, better pay. What about my non-compete? I asked. Hank smiled. "Our legal team has reviewed it. It's overly broad and likely unenforceable. Plus, we'd cover any legal expenses if Summit Edge tried to enforce it." "I'd need to think about it," I said carefully. "Of course," Hank replied. "Take the weekend. We can talk specifics on Monday." That evening, I met Veronica and Jason at Riverfront Brewing, a small pub away from downtown where we wouldn't likely run into other Summit Edge employees. They arrived together, their expressions a mix of anger and concern. "How are you holding up?" Veronica asked, sliding into the booth. "I'm all right," I assured them. "It's been a challenging couple of weeks, but I'll land on my feet." Jason snorted. "Dan's a fool. The office is in chaos already. Nobody knows where the Henderson proposal files are stored, and the system access you had hasn't been transferred to anyone else." "That sounds like a Dan problem," I replied, taking a sip of my water. Veronica leaned forward. "It's more than that. Everyone's talking. Not just our team. People are furious about how you were treated." I hadn't expected that. "Really?" "You were respected, Holly," Jason said. "Not just by us. The way Dan handled this. People are scared now. If they do this to you, their star team lead, what would they do to anyone else?" Veronica nodded. "Paula has been asking questions. The regional manager looks worried." "Good," I said simply. As we talked more, texts arrived from other team members. Similar stories of disorganization, frustration, and anger at management. Summit Edge was feeling my absence already. "What will you do now?" Jason asked. I hesitated. "I've had an offer from Vertex." Their eyes widened. "But my non-compete. Those aren't always enforceable," Veronica said quickly. She worked with contracts daily and knew the legalities, especially if they fired you without cause. "That's what Vertex's legal team said," I agreed. "But it's still a risk." Jason's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. "Dan's calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Saturday. He's never done that before. The Wilson account review is due Monday," Veronica explained to me. "Nobody can find your analysis files." I smiled slightly. Those files were properly stored on the company server, but my particular organizational system wasn't immediately obvious to others. I hadn't anticipated this would become an issue, but I couldn't deny feeling a flicker of satisfaction. "I should get going," I said, gathering my purse. "Early appointment tomorrow." As I stood to leave, Jason caught my eye. "Holly, if you did go to Vertex, hypothetically speaking, would they be hiring?" I paused, studying their faces. "Hypothetically, yes. They're expanding rapidly." The look that passed between Jason and Veronica told me everything. Saturday morning, I met with Vincent Torres, an employment lawyer recommended by a friend. His office was small but elegant, with diplomas from prestigious universities adorning the walls. I explained my situation, showing him the email and termination notice. "This is textbook wrongful termination," Vincent said, removing his glasses. Firing someone for taking approved bereavement leave could be argued as both a breach of contract and a violation of good faith. "I'm not interested in suing," I clarified. I just want to understand my options regarding my non-compete agreement. Vincent reviewed the document carefully. This is overly restrictive. A 6-month prohibition on working for competitors within a 300-mile radius, that's essentially telling you to leave the industry or relocate. Is it enforceable? I asked. In Idaho, it's questionable, especially given the circumstances of your termination. Courts typically won't enforce non-competes when the employer acts in bad faith. He leaned back in his chair. What's your plan, Holly? Vertex Transport Systems has offered me a position. Vincent nodded. Summit Edge would have to prove that you're causing them actual harm by working there. Given that they terminated you, that's a difficult argument to make. He scribbled some notes. I'd say proceed with caution, but don't let this non-compete prevent you from earning a living. Over the weekend, my phone continued buzzing with messages from my former team. The emergency Saturday meeting had apparently been tense. Dan was pressuring everyone to take on additional responsibilities to cover my absence with no extra compensation. The Wilson account files had been located, but nobody fully understood my analysis methodology. By Sunday evening, I had made my decision. Monday morning, I called Hank Fleming. I accept your offer, I told him. But I have one condition. Name it, Hank replied. I want to build my own team. If my former colleagues from Summit Edge apply to Vertex, I want them to receive fair consideration. Absolutely, Hank agreed. If they're half as talented as you, we'd be lucky to have them. That afternoon, I signed my contract with Vertex as Division Director of Pacific Northwest Operations. The salary was 40% higher than what I'd been making at Summit Edge, with better benefits and a sign-on bonus. As I left Vertex's offices, I checked my phone to find 7 new messages, one from each core member of my former team. They all wanted to meet for coffee privately. Tuesday morning, I sat at a quiet corner table in a small coffee shop downtown, waiting. Jason arrived first, then Veronica. One by one, Ethan, Louise, Diane, Gabriella, and Kayla joined us until we filled 2 tables pulled together. Summit Edge is imploding, Ethan said without preamble. Dan's micromanaging everyone. Paul is breathing down his neck, and clients are asking questions. The Wilson account is threatening to pull out, Veronica added. They wanted to know why you weren't handling their renewal. I sipped my coffee, listening as each shared similar stories of chaos and frustration. We heard you've accepted a position at Vertex, Jason finally said. The others grew quiet, watching me intently. News travels fast, I observed. We want to come with you, Veronica stated firmly. The others nodded in agreement. I studied their faces. You all have good positions at Summit Edge. Secure jobs. Are you sure you want to risk that? What security? Lou asked bitterly. If they'd fire you for attending your father's funeral, none of us are safe. Vertex is hiring, I said carefully. I can't promise anything, but I can refer you. Each of you would need to apply formally. We already have, Gabriella revealed, pulling out printed copies of confirmation emails. All 7 of us. Yesterday? I couldn't hide my surprise. You applied before talking to me? We trust you, Holly, Kayla said simply. Where you go, we go. I felt a surge of emotion, gratitude mixed with vindication. Let me make some calls. The following Monday, my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. The caller ID displayed Paula McCormick, Summit Edge's regional manager. Holly, Paula's voice had a forced calmness. We need to talk. Good morning, Paula, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What can I do for you? I've just received 7 resignation letters, all from your former team. All effective immediately. There was a pause. Care to explain? I took a slow breath. I'm not sure what explanation you're looking for. I don't work for Summit Edge anymore. They're all going to Vertex, where you just started as division director. Her voice hardened. This doesn't look coincidental. People make career choices for various reasons, Paula, I said. Perhaps you should ask Dan why your top-performing team is leaving en masse. This is about your termination, isn't it? She sounded resigned. I've reviewed the situation. Dan didn't consult me before letting you go. I would never have approved it. That's between you and Dan, I replied, though I was curious why Summit Edge's regional manager wasn't involved in terminating a team lead. Paula sighed. Dan claimed it was an urgent performance issue that couldn't wait for your return from the Seattle conference. I trusted his judgment. Clearly, that was a mistake. I said nothing, letting the silence grow uncomfortable. Look, Holly, Paula finally continued, I'm prepared to offer you your position back with a 10% raise and a formal apology. We need your expertise. The Wilson account is threatening to walk. I appreciate the offer, Paula, but I've accepted a position elsewhere. We'll match whatever they're paying, plus 15%. It's not about the money. Then what would it take? There was desperation in her voice now. 7 key employees walking out simultaneously is devastating. The operational knowledge alone, it would take time. Travel, I interrupted. Going back to when my father died and Summit Edge showing basic human decency instead of punishing me for grieving. The line went quiet. I need to go, Paula. I start my new position today, and I don't want to be late. Your non-compete. Feel free to have your legal team contact mine, I replied evenly, though they might want to review the circumstances of my termination first. After hanging up, I drove to Vertex's offices, arriving early to prepare for the day. Hank met me in the lobby, beaming. We're considering all 7 of your former colleagues, he said. Their qualifications are impressive. Interviews start Wednesday. Thank you for giving them a fair chance, I replied. Fair chance, Holly? They're top talent. Summit Edge's mistake is our gain. 2 days later, I received another call, this time from Barbara Kent in Human Resources at Summit Edge. I shouldn't be telling you this, she said quietly, but Dan Weaver has been placed on administrative leave pending review. Paula is launching an investigation into management practices, particularly around bereavement and time-off policies. That's good to hear, I said genuinely. The board of directors is involved now, Barbara continued. Losing an entire specialized team to a competitor has triggered alarm bells. They're reviewing all terminations from the past year. By Friday, all 7 of us. Of my former team members, several had received and accepted offers from Vertex. We met for dinner to celebrate, raising glasses in a toast to new beginnings. Veronica said, and to Holly. Jason added, who taught us what real leadership looks like. The following week, I received a formal letter from Summit Edge acknowledging my wrongful termination and offering a settlement to avoid litigation. I accepted it, not for the money, but for the official admission that they had been wrong. That same day, the Wilson account signed with Vertex, bringing their business to us after learning that their preferred team now worked under my direction. The river had moved, but we had remained steady, like rocks, just as my father had taught me. 3 months later, I stood at the front of Vertex's largest conference room, presenting our quarterly results to the executive team. The numbers spoke for themselves. 30% growth in our division for major client acquisitions, 3 of them former Summit Edge accounts, and operational efficiency improvements that had reduced costs by 22%. Exceptional work, Holly, Hank said when I finished. You and your team have exceeded every projection. I smiled. My team deserves the credit. They've been remarkable. After the meeting, I returned to my office to find my 7 core team members waiting with a cake. What's this for? I asked. It's been exactly 3 months since we all jumped ship together, Jason explained. We're celebrating our Independence Day. I laughed. You're all ridiculous. But happy, Veronica added. Seriously, Holly, everyone's thriving here. It was true. Each team member had grown professionally in their new roles at Vertex. They had more autonomy, better resources, and were finally receiving recognition for their contributions. Most importantly, they were valued as people, not just productivity machines. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Summit Edge Logistics announces restructuring amid client exodus. I showed it to the group. I heard they lost the Hernandez contract last week, Ethan said, cutting cake slices. That's 20% of their Pacific Northwest revenue. Dan's gone, Luis added. Cleared out his office Friday. Paul is trying to save what's left. But I felt no pleasure in Summit Edge's struggles, only a sense of justice. The company wasn't failing because we had left. It was failing because its leadership had created a culture where employees were disposable, where attending a father's funeral was considered a lack of commitment to Summit Edge. I raised my water glass. May they learn that a company is only as strong as how they treat their people. And to Holly, Gabriella added, who showed us we deserved better. 6 months after joining Vertex, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Paula McCormick. She'd left Summit Edge and joined a management consulting firm specializing in organizational culture. We met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Boise River. Paula looked different, more relaxed. The perpetual stress lines around her eyes softened. "Thank you for meeting me," she began. "I wanted to apologize properly for what happened." "You weren't directly responsible," I reminded her. "No, but I created the environment that made it possible," she sighed. "After you and your team left, everything unraveled. The board brought in external consultants to evaluate what went wrong. The report wasn't flattering to any of us in leadership." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "Summit Edge is being acquired by Meridian Shipping," Paula revealed, "at a fraction of its previous valuation. They're basically buying the client list and physical assets." The news didn't surprise me. Summit Edge had been hemorrhaging clients and talent for months. "What about Dan?" I asked. "Still unemployed. Last I heard, his reputation in the industry." She trailed off. "Let's just say your story has circulated widely." I hadn't spread the details of my termination, but I hadn't hidden them either. When asked why I'd left Summit Edge, I told the simple truth. Paula went on to say, "I've learned a valuable lesson from all this. Now I'm helping other companies avoid the same mistakes." Paula asked the question I could tell had been on her mind the entire time as we were wrapping up lunch. Was it worthwhile? Quietly leaving rather than battling. I reflected on my staff at Vertex, thriving, driven, and respected. I considered the customers who had followed us and were now served more effectively. My father, who had taught me that sometimes the loudest answer isn't the strongest, came to mind. "Yes," I said plainly. "The results speak for themselves." I was appointed Executive Vice President of Operations for the whole Northwest area by Vertex a year after that pivotal email that had altered the trajectory of my career. With the greatest employee satisfaction ratings in the company and a reputation for efficiency and innovation, my division had emerged as the gem in the crown. All 7 of my teammates had also received promotions. Jason was in charge of his own section now. Veronica had revolutionized our approach to client interactions and gained industry reputation. The others had distinguished themselves in a similar manner, their abilities finally being recognized for what they were. I got a little present in the mail on the anniversary that I was fired from Summit Edge. There was a message from Barbara and my old cactus plant, which was a little bigger but still alive. "This was saved from your desk by Kent. You might want it back now," I thought. Next Monday, Summit Edge will permanently shut. The cactus would receive plenty of sunshine on my windowsill, so I put it there. It had found a better spot to flourish after surviving being thrown away, just like me. That night, I took a car to the Boise River and stood on the bank where I used to fish with my father. As always, the water moved smoothly around the rocks. I reflected on how a single event, a chilly email that ended my job, had eventually resulted in more success and pleasure for everyone who had followed me, not just for myself. "You were right, Dad," I said to the water in a whisper. "Sometimes you need to stay steady and let the current do its work." Looking back on my path from fired team lead to executive vice president, I saw that dismantling Summit Edge had not been my intended form of retaliation. Building a better workplace, one where individuals were valued beyond their productivity measures, where leadership meant empowering others rather than dominating them, and where bereavement leave wasn't seen as a sign of lack of commitment, was how I exacted my retribution. Making something that rendered the previous system obsolete was the best form of retaliation, not demolishing what had wronged me. That would have pleased my father. I was incredibly thankful for the journey that had led me here, despite its difficult moments as I looked to the future. If you stay as firm as the rocks when the river of change rushes by, sometimes the toughest times result in the finest things.